Hi, my name is Ryan Kendrick. I'm a musculoskeletal physiotherapist and the developer of dynamic tape. Now let me start out by saying dynamic tape is not a kinesiology tape. It's designed with a completely different aim in mind. We apply it very, very differently, and it has very, very different physical properties. To illustrate this, we'll just do a quick demonstration. So here I've got a force gauge, a smart handle, and this measures the amount of resistance that we can create. We usually use it with our resistance bands. Now here we can see on the dial that it's measuring 0, and actually when I stretch our kinesiology tape, I've got three pieces of 2-inch or 5 centimetre kinesiology tape here, and when I stretch, the dial actually there doesn't move from 0. There's no significant resistance through range whatsoever. If I keep going and get to the end point, we should see that the dial is starting to go up, but the tape can't actually stretch any further. So I've hit a restrictive end point. So that may be useful for trying to block some movement at the end of range, but it means that we're really not getting a lot in the way of deceleration and resistance through range while still maintaining full range, because if I want to get resistance through range, I've got to apply the tape with the muscle or the joint in a short position to act like a bungee cord and give me this deceleration, this load absorption, this spring back the other way. Now if we compare with our dynamic tape, this time we've got 2 layers of 3-inch tape, so the equivalent amount of tape. At first we had 3 layers of 2-inch, here we have 2 layers of 3-inch, so the equivalent amount of tape. And what you'll see is, if we look at our dial here, is as soon as I start moving, we start getting resistance. There's 4.4 pounds or a couple of kilograms straight away. If I go a little bit stronger or a little bit further, we're up to 6.3. Now the interesting thing with dynamic tape is it's viscoelastic. What does that mean? It means its stiffness is dependent on the rate of strain. In other words, the faster we stretch it, the stiffer it becomes, or the more resistance it provides. So if I go a little bit quicker, now we're up to 16.2 pounds of force. If I go much quicker, there we have nearly 26 pounds of resistance or force, but as you'll notice, there's not a lot of stretch occurring on the tape. This is happening very quickly each time the tape lengthens just a little bit. Now as I say, it's viscoelastic, so the faster we move, the more resistance we get. So if you're going over on your ankle, or you're running, or you're jumping, or you're throwing, you will get more resistance and more deceleration because of the nature of the tape. You will also notice that there's not much in the way of an end point, and that allows us to get the tape on in that short position and then still get our people through full range. So we get that bungee effect and that recoil effect occurring. So very, very different physical properties, used very, very differently. Now let's give you a little bit of a benchmark to compare against. So here we've got a resistance band in here. In this case, the blue in this particular product is the extra firm level. And let's just see what happens here. So we can stretch that one out, and we're hitting about 7 pounds of force. Okay, if I go quickly, we're still 8.9 pounds of force. Okay, 12.5. So we're comparing that. We were getting 26 pounds, or about 12 kilograms of resistance with the double layer of the 3-inch tape with the dynamic tape. Here we're getting less than half, or about half of that amount. Okay, so very strong resistance that we can create. Why are we concerned with creating this resistance? Well, with dynamic tape, we're very keen on managing load, managing movement patterns, and managing function. We don't tend to get too caught up with chasing pain around. And of course, we address pain, and you know, improvements in pain is often a byproduct of the treatment. But we know that there's a very poor correlation between tissue damage and pain. We can have people with a lot of tissue damage and not much pain. We can have people with not much tissue damage, if any ongoing tissue damage, and lots of pain. So we try to go back a step and look at those contributing factors. We also know that tissues don't fail because of pain. They fail because of load. There's lots of work, if we look at our tendinopathy, to show things like compressive load and tensile load. That combination of the two will bring on tendinopathy most rapidly. Some of the work of Soslavsky, Sean Docking and their colleagues. So we want to manage that load. That's things like our Achilles tendons, our patella tendons, our jumper's knees, our rotator cuff problems, and so on. We also do know that for lots of things like our muscle tears, the more we load it, the more it does in fact hurt. And so we want to be able to manage that load, which will also then help in managing pain. But as I say, the tissues don't fail because of the pain. That's an output or a result. So we want to manage some of those contributing factors leading to it, whether it's directly or whether it's indirectly. We also want to manage movement patterns in the absence of pain. And that also follows on to managing function. We may have somebody who has a foot drop, who's had a stroke. They don't have any pain, but in this case the load we're talking about is the resistance or the force of gravity acting on the foot, and the person unable to overcome that resistance to lift their toes, and subsequently they're more likely to have falls by catching their toes on the ground, for example, when they're walking, or they may have difficulty getting up stairs to lift the toes up the stairs and so on. So we can use that strong resistance and recoil in the tape to actually help overcome that resistance of gravity or overcome that force of gravity to maintain their foot in an improved position. And we see this immediately when we apply the tape. We'll get a 20-30 degree improvement in their range of motion or in their resting position immediately, and consequently we see changes in their gait speed, in the angles of their feet and so on when they're walking, and a reduction therefore in risk of falls.